So a third woman has accused the slayer of grandmas, Governor Andrew Cuomo, um, as being sexual harasser. Frankly, I mentioned the grandma slayer bit because the initial harassment was basically launched on the springboard of the Cuomo's administration's scandalous hiding of the number of nursing home deaths, and to a lesser degree, on the back of Ron Kim's bullying allegations. Meaning, it seems, at least from my appraisal, that Andrew Cuomo was in the spotlight because of the heinous undercounting of grandmas. And as the public of New York, you know, appropriated that information, or at the very least processed that information, that Cuomo, in order to avoid federal prosecution, lowered the number of people that basically were dying in those nursing homes. Well, the public was very angry at him for that. And so the other charges that basically came up got that much more national attention because of the initial charge, the death and the killing of all those grandmas in those nursing homes. It goes beyond stuffing nursing homes under the mattress and floorboards, though. As I reported months ago, Cuomo issued an order that required nursing homes to accept COVID-19 patients being discharged from hospitals, so as long as they were medically stable. Under this edict, nursing homes were forbidden from testing patients to see if they were still infected or worse, contagious. So Cuomo, he followed this up with a provision that shielded nursing homes from liability. Cuomo packed elderly people, the group most susceptible to COVID, in tightly packed spaces during the pandemic and forbade testing to determine who was infected. The results of this choice ended up being devastating. Nursing homes made up only 1% of New York, and yet they accounted for 28% of the deaths. Put that in context. 1% of nursing homes for the state of New York, 28% of the deaths. More than 47,000 people died under Cuomo's stewardship in New York. So no, this story should not take a back seat, even if we have to walk and chew gum at the same time. It is important, and it was the thing that started all of this. Now, onto the sexual harassment front. Cuomo's problems, honestly, just got prodigiously worse. The first woman to come forward, former aide Governor Cuomo's Lindsey Boland, described her discomfort with Cuomo starting in 2016 when her boss informed her that the governor had a crush on her. Boland details her experience in a Medium post, noting that Cuomo would go out of his way to touch me, my lower backs, arms, and legs. Boland said she left her job as a special advisor to the governor shortly after an incident where she says he kissed me on the lips. In a Medium post, she noted no woman should feel forced to hide their experiences of workplace intimidation, harassment, and humiliation, not by the governor or anyone else. The second woman to come forward, her experiences being similar to Boland. Charlotte Bennett, former executive assistant and health policy advisor for Cuomo administration, recounts an unsettling episode that occurred when she was alone with the governor in her state capitol office. Cuomo asked her innuendo-laden questions about sex life, whether she's monogamous in her relationships, whether she's whether though she's she's willing to have relationships or sexual relationships with men that are older, and he noted to her that he is willing to have sexual relationships with younger women in their 20s. Hint, hint. The Bennett left her position in November, basically telling the New York Times that the governor had harassed her late last spring during the height of the state's fight against COVID. And now we have the third woman. Now, this one is caught an earshot of an eye shot, for one, at the camera, but an earshot of people who heard what Cuomo said when he addressed her. This was a wedding reception in 2019. Cuomo is working the room when he stops to speak to early 30-something Anna Rush. In an interview on Monday, Rush says Governor Cuomo put his hand on her exposed lower back. The New York Times is reporting, quote, when she removed his hand with her own, Mrs. Rush recalled the governor remarked that she seemed aggressive and placed his hand on her cheeks. He asked if he could kiss her loudly enough for friends standing near to hear. Miss Rush was bewildered by the entreaty. She said and pulled away as the governor drew closer. Quote, I was so confused and shocked and embarrassed, Rush said, whose recollection was corroborated by her friend, contemporaneous text messages and photographs of the event. Quote, I turned my head away and didn't have words at the moment. Unquote. It sounds like a predator. And it sounds like, whether this is a workplace environment or whether this is apparently even a wedding reception, he is perfectly willing to go after what he wants aggressively and seems to not care that the other person is indeed a person with their own wants. And it seems as if he has a type. Very young women in their 20s or 30s, attractive and breathing. And basically breathing. It's also important to note that her testimony basically cooperates with the other women are saying. Each woman that gives a story comes out with a story that is very similar to the previous woman. It makes it that much more believable when it happens over and over and over again. And the pattern is pretty much exactly the same. In the press release on Sunday, Governor Cuomo said he was being playful, quote unquote, but says he, quote, may have been insensitive, unquote. He continues, quote, I have never intended to offend anyone or cause any harm. I spent most of my life at work, and my colleagues are often personal friends. At work, sometimes I think I'm being playful and make jokes that I think are funny. I do on occasion tease people in what I think is a good-natured way. Hey, are you monogamous in your relationships? Do you have sex with older men? Hey, I'm okay with having sex with younger women. I'm Governor Cuomo. What? You're leaving? You're leaving? Why are you leaving? Why are you leaving? We're just talking. I'm just joking. Those aren't the type of jokes that people tend to like, especially when they're not interested in you sexually. He does explicitly say he never touched anybody and never propositioned anybody. Here's the thing. Cuomo, meaning he's contradicting the first story. He's contradicting Boland's story because she said he forcibly kissed her. For the other ones that never touched anybody, well, they're saying that he has put his hands on them on multiple occasions in this case. I would be shocked if there are not more women. I would be shocked, utterly shocked, if there are not more women. Whether they come forward or not, I don't know. But I would be shocked if there are not more women. There's also needed to be said that Cuomo changed the story. Initially, it was, I didn't do anything, period. And then that I didn't become anything, period, became, I may have been playful. But nothing serious, just playful. Basically, this is somewhat of an indication of guilt on some level. The question is what level of guilt it represents. The footing that Cuomo would assume would be one that he can argue inappropriate joking, even if he knows that the investigation will bring up instances that the joking argument will be utterly ludicrous and stretch all credulity. It doesn't matter. The sexual predator label is worse. Understand what I'm saying? If he's in a courtroom, or if he's being asked questions, and he says, look, I was just joking with these women. I wasn't being serious. And he said, hey, when you said, can I kiss you really loud to a woman that you just met, that you didn't know at a particular party, and you put your hand on her back, were you joking then, or were you trying to have sex with that woman? No, I was just joking. So wait, you joke by asking women if you could forcibly put your lips on them? Yeah, that's how we joke in our household. We're Cuomos. I mean, I think the problem that he may have is that people are going to be like, dude, that's not joking. But the problem, or the thing that he has as a defense that he's going to use is basically everything was just playing around. I was horseplaying. I wasn't serious. But that's the footing that he's assuming. That means that that's the best footing that he probably can take. And that's the best argument that he believes he can credibly make, even if it stretches that same credulity. I wouldn't want my mom or my wife to be around a person like this. Meaning, I don't want my mom working for a wage or my wife working for a wage, working for a job. They're there in order to do a job and to get paid for that particular job. And they have to deal with somebody that is basically using the power of their position and transmogrification, that power and accentuate that power in a way that tries to pull sex or sexual favors from the person who you're there that is in a lower position in that capacity. Yeah, this is problematic on a whole host of levels. There's already an investigation into Cuomo's actions. Cuomo initially tried to choose the person who was going to investigate him, but that was blown away because the politics wouldn't allow him to do such. When you have this many people saying you did something, he had to allow the Attorney General of the state to basically choose the people who were going to investigate Cuomo, meaning an outside investigator. Mark my words, there will be more women, whether they step forward or not. I don't know. But this kind of Me Too call where anybody that has an axe to grind with Cuomo is going to do it. When you question whether Cuomo is guilty or not, I would say just remember, Cuomo was stuffing grandmas in mattress covers, trying to hide the number because he didn't want to deal with an investigation. And while he was doing that, hiding the number of people that he had dying in those nursing homes, many of which were based on his own decisions, his own failed incompetence, he received an Emmy. He wrote a book on leadership. He gave those dodgy propaganda session briefings by definition because he was cooking the books, meaning he wasn't necessarily telling people the actual numbers. He was telling people the cook numbers. It was a propaganda session. They were calling for this guy to get into the presidential race. He was doing all of this. And despite knowing his sins, he tells people he sleeps well at night. I sleep well at night knowing that I saved lives. This, of course, didn't include the dead grandmothers that were being stuffed in the administration's proverbial mattresses. He sucked up all the attention and leaned into the narrative of him being a great leader. So this level of mendacity that's been put on display for the last year, juxtaposed against the number of deaths and the actual sins that he committed in this particular administration. And he did all this while receiving an Emmy and while leaning into this notion that I'm the guy that know what the fuck is going on and what I'm doing. With a guy like that, that has this capacity for shame that is on a level of superhero-esque capacity for shame. With a guy like that, lie about preying on these multiple women, or for that matter, being a bully and using his political leverage in that way. No, I don't. No. I think a guy like that would lie about those things. I think he's guilty. Do I know it as a flat fact? No, I do not. If there are other women that come forward, I suppose each woman that comes forward is one more nail in Cuomo's coffin. There will be an investigation. I would imagine that investigation is going to look through all sorts of things. But I also imagine that Cuomo taking this position that he was joking, like I said, is the most defensible position he could take, even if the defense is ludicrous in some respects, especially if it gets extremely sexual. The thing is, he's taking that position because that is the only defensible position he could take. If he could take another one where he said, I didn't do anything, he would take that position. That means Cuomo knows he did something. The question becomes, how much? What did he do? How many women did he do it to? And is it really defensible to say, I was joking? That's the question. Him budging on that is some indication of guilt. And like I said, the question becomes, how much guilt? Like, share, and of course, subscribe. By the way, guys, make sure you hit the subscription button. Make sure you subscribe. Google does weird things sometimes. But I'm going to say like, share, and subscribe.